Hello, I'm Bob Orr, and welcome to Washington Unplugged. There were two big developments today involving U.S. forces in Afghanistan. First, we have word now of a U.S. soldier being captured by insurgents there, and at the same time, some 4,000 plus Marines have launched a major offensive against a southern Taliban stronghold. Joining me now to talk about all of this is our national security correspondent, David Martin. He's at the Pentagon. David, first, what about the captured soldier? What happened there?
Well, this happened on Tuesday. He went missing then when apparently he just left his base. This is in eastern Afghanistan, just left his base with 3 Afghan soldiers to do what, we're not sure. And he exposed himself and he was captured. And the fact that the U.S. military is now confirming that he is in the hands of the Taliban would tell you that they've had some contact with the Taliban, offering them some proof that they have him in their hands. Now, what the Taliban intend to do with him, we do not know, but obviously they're going to use this soldier for whatever their purposes may be.
We haven't heard yet about any demands or any propaganda show or anything like that.
No, although I've seen a Taliban spokesman claiming that they were drunk when they were captured, but you don't know if that's true or not.
Let me ask you about this Marine effort now against another Taliban stronghold. This sounds like a big effort. What are they trying to do?
Well, this is the beginning, for the first time after all these years of war in Afghanistan, of the first real counterinsurgency operation in southern Afghanistan. 4,000 Marines going into the Helmand River Valley, which is the opium growing area of Afghanistan and where the Taliban until now has basically ruled. And they're going in there not on the typical search and destroy mission. They're going in there to set up outposts and stay so that they can protect the population from the Taliban, bring in Afghan soldiers, bring in Afghan government officials to start running the place again. But to give you some measure of how far they have to go on this, there are 4,000 Marines and 360 Afghan soldiers in this operation. And you wouldn't be able to call this a success until those numbers are exactly reversed and you have the Afghan army in the lead and the Marines simply as advisors.
These are Marines, though. They're going to set up shop, as I understand, to kind of live there and try to bring stability to the region?
That's right. And you know, most military assaults, you try to achieve surprise and catch the enemy asleep. But in this case, they didn't even try to achieve surprise. The NATO commander in that region basically announced that this operation was going to happen last week. And he said it was the first of many, because another U.S. Army brigade is going to go into southern Afghanistan. And so they are going to start flooding that area with troops. And until now, there have never been enough troops in southern Afghanistan to do anything other than strikes against individual Taliban targets. But the classic counterinsurgency operation of going in, protecting the people from the Taliban, and then trying to weed out the fighters who are just doing it for the money from the ideological hardliners. None of that has happened before, and that's what's just beginning for the first time now.
And one more thing, David, while you're here, just quickly, it looks like North Korea is up to its old tricks again. What happened there?
Well, these are 4 anti-ship cruise missiles, and saying cruise is important because the UN ban on North Korean missile tests only covers ballistic missile tests. So far, they haven't violated any UN resolution by these tests. However, the pattern on these exercises is that they begin with these short-range cruise missiles and slowly increase the range of the missiles they're firing until they are firing ballistic missiles. However, there is no missile on the pad that has a range to threaten the United States. These are all short and medium-range missiles which are going to almost certainly fall into the Sea of Japan, well away from anything that would threaten the United States.
Okay, a lot to keep your eye on today. David, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
The other major foreign policy story developing into the weekend is President Obama's upcoming trip on Monday to Moscow. Many experts say this 2.5-day visit there is the new president's opportunity to prove his resolve in handling some very tough foreign policy questions. Nuclear arms reductions, NATO expansion, missile defense, all of it on the table with the Russians. And joining me now to discuss some of this is Heather Conley from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Heather, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
How big of a test is this for President Obama?
It's a very big test, and this is where we're going to have to cut through some of the rhetoric on reset and really see how much President Obama can get done with his Russian counterparts, but perhaps more importantly, what he's willing or unwilling to give to the Russians to seek any meaningful compromise on the relaunch of the START talks.
In teeing up the trip, some White House advisors yesterday were using pretty tough language. I mean, one said, we're not there to reassure them about anything. That's a pretty hard line from an administration that so far hasn't really ventured too far into the political realm of foreign policy.
The Obama administration doesn't like being painted into a corner, and that's what the Russians are trying to do. They're really pushing very tough language. They want the Obama administration to unequivocally give up the missile defense, the so-called third sites in Poland and the Czech Republic. They want a declarative statement that there will no longer be any more enlarging of NATO into their perceived sphere of influence.
And the U.S. just isn't going to go there. They're just not going to do that.
They can't. They can't. This is really critical to maintain the strong transatlantic alliance and the virility of NATO, if you will. He can't come out that definitively. He's got to be able to provide assurances to the Russians that, again, missile defense, whether conceived or not conceived, is not against the Russians. It's about an Iranian threat. You know, stability on Russia's borders is a good thing, but they just can't understand that that the instability that's in Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, that's not in Russia's best interest.
How much hard linkage is there between the goal to reduce nuclear stockpiles? I mean, that's the START treaty you mentioned. They've got to take a crack at that. But are the Russians linking those reductions to kind of a pullback in these other areas?
They are. Again, this is to maximize their position. Both sides agree there needs to be a verification mechanism in place because the START verification mechanism runs out at the end of this year. But what they want to do is make some very hard assurances that the United States will not pursue missile defense, will not pursue NATO enlargement. And this is not tied to the purpose of relaunching START, but they're trying to see how far they can push President Obama in getting some things that they want locked down.
So we know what they want. What do we want here? What is the president going there with the goal of getting?
Well, I think he wants to start afresh with the Russians. The last few years, the relationship has really gone through its own particular depths, and I think last August, the Russian-Georgia conflict was definitely the low point of U.S.-Russian relationships. He's trying to start afresh, using the START talks as a way to get agreement, reduce nuclear weapons. I mean, that's good for both sides, but again, that's not enough for Russia. They want to secure some of these things that are important to them, that continue to assure them of so-called superpower status.
Does President Obama bring up things like human rights, Iran? I mean, are these things all out there?
Absolutely. He has to talk on the human rights agenda. And what's important during his visit, there's going to be sort of a parallel summit of human rights activists, civil society leaders. His message to them is critical. It's unclear how much information the Russian public is getting on these vital issues. So what he says in public to that community is critical. You mentioned Iran. The stakes are incredibly high. And President Obama needs to secure the Russian help in the UN Security Council and elsewhere. And the Russians have always played not an unhelpful role, but certainly not a helpful role. Will they continue to provide military equipment to Iran? Will they continue this in light of the post-election situation we find ourselves in?
It's not been lost on the White House that some people think that the president might be too soft, that he has a soft demeanor. He knows that. So what should we watch for when he appears in these joint news conferences or whatever to be able to diagnose exactly how tough he is? What should we watch for?
I don't know if it's toughness, but it's clarity. It is clarity about the respecting the territorial sovereignty integrity of Georgia. It's the clarity to say publicly that NATO enlargement is not a conversation that we're going to have at a U.S.-Russia summit table. That is for the alliance, and that's for the countries who take the hard steps and do the work to join the alliance. He's got to be clear. And if he's not clear, then that sends some very troubling messages, both to America's allies and to others who are watching to see, you know, how crisp and clear we're going to be on those issues that are absolutely critical to us.
So the stakes are big. There's no doubt about that.
It is very big, and you have to look back 7 months into an administration. This is the third major trip to Europe. These are high-stakes summits. The G20 summit in April in London, obviously the visit for the D-Day events, but these are huge events. So young into an administration that's still filling its ranks. The stakes are high, and the world is watching.
Heather Conley, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your help today.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching Washington Unplugged today. Join us again tomorrow from Aspen, Colorado at 12:30 p.m. on CBSNews.com. I'm Bob Orr. Have a good day.